What the f*** is that? Whatever we want to talk about, we're going to talk about it. What's up, guys? Corey here with another episode of E4 Explicit Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything. Have an array of guests, and today we have my man, Mr. Mike Gould. He is the owner and the mayor, more importantly, of Hounds Town USA, and New York is where the headquarters is where we're at right now. So you might hear some dogs barking in the background, possibly, because we're at a doggy daycare. But it is what it is, and we got them pretty quiet because they're outside now. So, Mike,
yes, sir.
Thank you for
Corey,
being on the
it's
show.
always a pleasure. You're a cool guy. Got a lot of spirit, energy. Love it. So, yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Of course, man. So give me a little bit experience or explanation of what you do, what your experience is. Now, I know you were a cop for like 30 years, right?
Long time. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So just give me a nutshell explanation, I guess.
Explanation.
Yeah, of like your career, what you've done, and like how you landed at Hounds Town USA training dogs.
So kind of real quick, I quit school when I was 16. I dropped out of high school, joined the Navy when I was 17, spent 2 years on an aircraft carrier. My first job in law enforcement, my first legitimate job, was as a New York State corrections officer. I worked in a maximum security state prison for about 2 years. Then I became an NYPD, New York City police officer, and I was one of the founding members of their Canine unit back in 1982. Wow. And then the rest is just more and more and more of that.
Wow. Okay, so you co-founded NYPD Canine unit.
Yeah, I was recruited to, they had a pilot program. NYPD, ironically, didn't have a canine unit until the early 80s. So they wanted to introduce a program, and I was part of that pilot program, and now it is now what the NYPD, there was the foundation of what the NYPD canine unit is today.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You would think NYPD, they've been around for God knows how long.
Right.
They would have all their shit together.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it was political at the time. So, there's a lot of politics involved in everything, particularly in law enforcement. So, yeah. So they tried it out, and it's been successful, and I've been doing that forever. I later went on to a Nassau County Police Department. I was their commanding officer, yada, yada, yada. So my life is about dogs. Since that time, my life has been surround dogs 365 days a year, including Christmas, holidays. Dogs are in my life and in my world.
Awesome. So you also, when 9/11 happened, you were obviously you were an NYPD cop at that point, right?
Actually, I was a lieutenant in the Nassau County Police Department, but I had a private explosive dog company called Canine Consultants International. Prior to 9/11, there really wasn't much need for bomb dogs. If you really think about it, you're a little younger than, in 1990 and 2000, there wasn't a lot of need. People weren't calling up and saying, hey, can you search my garage for bombs? So, unfortunately, the events of 9/11 brought rise and awareness to explosive dogs. So now you see them at airports all over. But at the time, it wasn't. So, yeah, I was one of the first companies that had explosive dogs that could go out and search all the perimeter buildings at Ground Zero in downtown Manhattan. Yeah.
So, so take me back in that experience, like when were you walking in Ground Zero, walking around?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a very surreal, eerie time. Again, everybody has a different recollection of what that was like, but I mean, at the time, it was surreal. It was like, so if you can think of the World Trade Centers as fingers on your hand, and then you drive into the city and just see a dark cloud of soot, and the fingers aren't there, it's hard to imagine. So if you look at your hand, and you don't see two fingers on it, it'll take you a while to process that. So it was a very surreal, obviously shocking experience for the whole world, not just New York, not just our country, for the whole world. Nobody knew what the fuck was going on. You told me, you unleashed me, so to speak, so I can use the F word. I like it. I love it. I'm going to try to censor that, but you should have let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. So, yeah, no, it was a very surreal. It evoked every emotion you could possibly have, gratitude, sadness. I mean, there was a lot of things happening there that is really unimaginable. And, I kind of equate it to like Pearl Harbor. Now the newer generations don't even, they don't even realize the magnitude of what happened that day. Yeah. So, we were there searching buildings for bombs and searching because nobody knew. Nobody had a plan. The military didn't have a plan. Damn. Nobody knew what was happening. The Pentagon didn't know. So it was really a very surreal, shocking moment for our world. I don't even like to say country because it affected everybody.
Wow. That's fucking crazy. So what did you like? What type of stuff did you see? Obviously, 2 buildings with 3,000 plus people. That just,
right. Well, the most impressing thing, or the most thing that was impressed in my mind, there was literally nothing there. So if you think there was no real, without sounding gory, there was no real. Everything was emulsified. So every bone in people's bodies were emulsified to sand. Basically, there was no chairs. There was nothing except a few pieces of burning steel. But other than that, you would expect. All these people tragically died. All the furniture in the building, it was all emulsified, meaning that it was just dust. It really, so that, I guess the incineration, the pure force of it all, just emulsified. So obviously bodies were recovered, body parts more often, not really intact bodies. But, and again, it was gray, not just because it was gloomy, but it was literally gray because the soot was so powerful that it took the sun away. So 9/11 was actually a beautiful day, I don't know if people recall, but it was probably one of the most beautiful days in New York. Yeah. Not a cloud in the sky. When the towers collapsed, all that soot, it covered the sky. So literally downtown Manhattan was covered with soot and grayness. So it had, a very big impact on people. People were in shock. Everyone, the police commissioners, politicians, presidents, everybody was in shock. And that's, of course, what attributed to bringing people together. There was one of the things that impressed me the most was the darkness, the gloominess of it, because it was visually that way. And also, you couldn't hear a peep anywhere in Manhattan. Midtown Manhattan, you didn't hear a car horn honk. So normally if you go into Manhattan today, you're just going to hear crazy-ass noise, car horns honking, people crazy. It was the most solemn experience I've ever seen throughout the city of New York. Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow. So everybody was just like, there was no taxis making any noise. There was no horns. Why? Because everybody was just like at a standstill. Like,
they were terrified. What the fuck just happened? They didn't know is that the world. I mean, when you think about it, they were literally terrified. There was no advance warning of this. Yeah. So it just happened, and people literally didn't know what to do and what to expect. So people were in a universal state of shock.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was weird. Very weird.
Because I lived in D.C.
Right.
And I wasn't in D.C. like next to the Pentagon, but I was in Maryland. When that
How
happened,
old were you?
I was in 8th grade.
Right.
So I was in science class and I was watching the towers burn, and I'm like, my dumb ass was like, I didn't even know what the fuck the Twin Towers were. I was like, oh, it's an oil company. It's on fire.
Right.
And it's like,
no. And I think that's part of the experience. Everybody has a little bit of its experience, but, I think older people really, mature adults realize that this could be the end of the world. This could be World War III, whatever. Yeah. So it was really terrifying for everybody. So it was nothing nobody could rely on. We're used to having order in our life. You're used to asking somebody what to do. The police commissioner didn't know what to do. The mayor didn't know what to do. The president didn't really have a clue. You can't make decisions when you don't know what the fuck is happening. Yeah. So, it was a very, in my lifetime, it was the most, I guess, emotionally impactful experience, or one of them.
It has to be. And you think about it, that totally makes sense of everyone's reaction, because everybody romanticizes the like when you watch Independence Day, when you watch films, when you watch big movies, and like New York's under attack, it's like this fucking chaos. It's like all this stuff, and you would think the world is ending when you literally see 2 of the largest buildings in the world fall to dust and like out of the skyline.
Right.
Like
it's almost unimaginable.
It really
is.
If
you think of 2 buildings just collapsing to nothing, to dust, really dirt. It didn't fall over. Yeah. It didn't, you have no idea how this is going to happen. Wow. So, but, in the good part, it brought everybody, literally everybody together. There was no liberals, there were no conservatives, there was no Democrats. Everybody was in shock, so therefore they came together. And that was the coolest thing. Sadly, 20 years later, however long it is, it's back to same old shit. It really Everybody's fucking arguing and, disagreeing. So that's the sad part. to me. That was, so it brought the world together.
That's incredible. All right, so then you like you said, you were at Nassau at that point, and then so canine dogs scare the shit out of me. Like when I see a cop dog,
right.
It's a German Shepherd, and I grew up with white German Shepherds. So I'm like, oh, I want to pet it,
right.
but then I'm like, no, because it'll rip my fucking throat out if it was told to. So like, how does that work?
Right. Well, so it takes a lot of training. So one of the things I mentioned to people, it takes more training to train a police dog than it does a human in the police academy. So the canine academy for the dog is longer than the human academy for a human being.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So to make a human a cop, it's about 6 months, 4, 5, 6 months, depending where you are. The canine academy is 6 months because you're asking an animal that doesn't have a human brain to do tasks that are primal, and you need to be control of that. So you have to control aggression. So dogs are potentially dangerous, and we train them to apprehend fleeing felons, meaning a dog runs 30 miles an hour like a heat-seeking missile. So no one's going to outrun a dog. There's a lot of responsibility on the handler, just like a gun or any other mechanism or tool in law enforcement. You have to be careful of how you use it.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know who the president was, but he said there's no greater joy in life than hunting armed men. I don't know if it was one of them.
Yeah.
And that was the most exciting, exhilarating experiences of my life. The time that, so you train these dogs for like 6 months, and it's not to viciously attack people, but they're used to hunt people, and they are technology that can't be duplicated. So a helicopter can't do what a dog does, infrared light, all the technology that we have today can't replace the ability of a dog to go into woods or a building and locate somebody hiding within seconds. And it's just incredible to me.
That's insane.
Yeah. So this primitive dogs have been around a million years, 500,000 years. And when you harness their energy, meaning their nose and their desire to hunt, we go along for the ride, so to speak, the human. So it's incredible. So my point is, that was what, in my lifetime, the most exhilarating thing I could do was go out in the middle of the night. No one else could, by myself, basically, because you couldn't have other cops and stuff with you because that would distract the dog. And just let the dog find, and I'd challenge people. I would challenge the helicopter. I would whatever it was.
What?
We have an area down here in New York, Jones Beach, and it's a big woodlands. Sure. I don't know what the hell you actually call it. But it would be like finding, if I told you to go hide in this 100 acres and play hide and seek, I would tell you, Corey, go hide. I'm going to give you an hour. Good advice was get up in a tree, though, because I'm going to release a dog. So just
shit my pants immediately.
Right, but the rules were make sure you're up high where a dog couldn't access you, obviously. So we'd let you go, run away, whatever. You're a serial killer, you're a mass murderer, Corey the mass murderer, and we know he's in this area, these 50 wooded acres. I don't even know what the hell it is, but it's a barrier beach down on Fire Island. Then I would say you're there, and it could be at nighttime. So I'd invite the helicopter. I was in charge of, the nicest part was, so as well as I do, one of the nicest things kids can do is play hide and go seek.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you pretend, right?
Yeah,
you pretend you have a walkie-talkie.
Yeah. Cops and robbers and
exactly.
Shit. Yeah.
But I didn't have to pretend because I was the commanding officer of the unit.
So you were legit doing it.
Right. So I'd get on the radio and I could have the helicopter. I mean, I was like, holy shit, this is cool. I'm still my 12-year-old, 14-year-old brain, and I'm getting on the radio, K91, I'd like helicopter assistance or whatever. And 5 minutes later, I'm like, holy shit, this is cool,
This is real.
And that's what I'm thinking, because I've never really taken myself too serious, and I'm always having fun.
Yeah.
That's one of my basic philosophies in life. But I get the helicopter, which is a couple of $1 million. Then they have infrared cameras on it that supposedly, see heat sources at night. Whatever it was, I'd let my dog go, and in 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, in 50 acres, we would find where you are. We'd find your location.
What?
So it's incredible because the dog is using its nose, which is incredible. And, there was some tactical stuff if we worked into the wind and so forth. But if I was good at what I was doing, deploying the dog, we were like super, super successful. So it was awesome. There's nothing like that.
That's insane because when I watch Cops, that's my only connection to law enforcement and dogs is when I watch Cops, and when they unleash the The dog, it's fucking insane.
Right. Yeah, and it is serious. And the biggest challenge, I testify in court a lot on behalf of dogs mostly. So, it's misunderstood because you have an image of dogs from watching TV. And most people think they have an intelligence that they really don't have. They have a very simple mission is to take, for example, if we doing it, criminal apprehension, meaning I have to know, of course, that you're a bad guy and you're fleeing the scene. There's legal, obviously you just can't, send your dog on the mailman. You have to, or a Boy Scout, you have to know your legal authority. But when that occurs, a dog is going to run you down and take you to the ground. It doesn't matter how big, how fast, or how strong you are. The dog, a 70-pound dog, hitting you at 30 miles an hour, and either in an arm or a leg or a part of your body. And they're trained to do it. It's not easy. You would think it's easy to train a dog to do it. You have to take months to do it because it's counterintuitive for a dog to fight a man, a human, or an adult. So they have to learn how to twist their head so they get a good, what we call a full mouth bite. They can't just indiscriminately bite in the ass and bite in the ankle because that would cause more injuries. Sure. So they have to take what we call a full mouth bite. But, when everything goes well, it's really, it was enjoyable. Yeah. You're taking a criminal off the street. That's no other technology could. You obviously watch cop shows, so those fat ass cops with 30 pounds.
They're not running.
They're not running out anybody. So that's not happening. So the dog is all that. They're agile. They can jump over 6-foot fences. It's exciting. It's an adrenaline rush when you can do that. With all the technology and just say, K911, we got them, and that's it. The helicopter, everybody thinks their technology is irreplaceable.
You would think helicopter, infrared, looking down,
right? But you know what? They zoom in on horse shit, a steamy pile of horse shit, because they're zooming in on heat sources, not odor. There's no technology really that can replace odor. So the infrared, they'll see some deer, they'll see whatever's hotter than the rest of the environment.
Sure.
So if you hide under something, you wouldn't be seen by infrared anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's cool. Totally cool.
That's insane. So tell me your craziest apprehension dog story of what's the time? What were we looking at?
18.
Oh, sweet. All right, good. So tell me this. I'm guessing
the
one with the
So there's the Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, right? Murphy's Law. So you can train in police academies and you can re-simulate or set up training scenarios, try to duplicate any possibility. But invariably, in law enforcement, you can't. Whatever your imagination can tell you can go wrong, kind of like the Twin Towers. Nobody could predict. Sure. Nobody trained for that. So we trained our dogs for criminal apprehension, meaning if there was a felony and you had reasonable cause to believe the person did it, you can release your dog on them. And the dog is supposed to bite and hold either an arm or a leg. That's what we train day in and day out to do. So I had this, it was in Queens somewhere, and it was a felony. I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was stolen cars or something. And the person ran, and I was in position to apprehend him. So I sent my dog. We call it sending him. We give him a command to go after somebody. And once they target the person, it's literally like a heat-seeking missile. They'll get hit by, nothing is going to interfere with that deployment of the dog. It's on. It's on. And their power is like 270 pounds a square inch of pressure. They could literally break your arm, even if it's in the right place. Make a long story short, here's the guy. He runs out of a car. There was a car chase, and he crashed the car. You see this on TV all the time. Sure. And I'm like, stop, or I'm going to release the dog. And he kept running. I said, stop, or I'm going to release the dog.
He's like, fuck you.
Right. He says, fuck you. But I guess, whatever's going. And, of course, they're panicking. Criminals panic. Yeah, and this is why dogs are great, because you want to bring these things to a conclusion as quick as possible. Sure. Because then you see carjackings if you watch. There's always secondary crime. Thank you. Yeah. So I released this dog, and off he goes. And it was nighttime, so I don't have a very clear, visual of everything. And we're talking about before, like the Twin Towers, when things are out of place. So the dog goes, bites the guy in the arm, which is like perfect. And I'm like, oh, man, that was perfect. He's going to bring this guy down to the ground like he's supposed to, and I'm going to come run up, get my fat ass up there in about however long it takes, and I'm going to handcuff him. So this is a kind of a funny thing, right? Because we have police procedures, right? If you arrest somebody, you handcuff them. You put their two hands behind their back and you handcuff them. Sure. So in this instance, the dog bites the arm, and the arm comes off in the dog's mouth. He had a prosthetic limb. Now, what was the odds of this, So the dog had a prosthetic limb. Now, the dog is he's not making moral decisions. He doesn't give a shit the guy committed a murder or stole a car. So he takes the guy's arm in his mouth, and that was like his reward.
He won.
Right? Yeah. So he was happy, and now the guy continues to run away. I'm screaming for the dog to go after him. The dog's never experienced this. He's like, what are you fucking talking about? I have his arm in my mouth. That's what I've been training to do for 6 months. So that was the odds of that occurring, how many people have prosthetic limbs, how many people with prosthetic limbs steal cars, how many people with prosthetic limbs run away from a 80-pound police dog. He did. So it was funny. Of course, like I said, I don't take these things seriously. It's like just like a dog doesn't get mad at anybody. Me in law enforcement, I never got mad at people. If I did, I shouldn't have, I couldn't have done it for that long.
Sure.
So the point was that was one of the more oddest things.
Did you catch him?
We later caught him. Obviously we draw up a perimeter and stuff, and now he doesn't have his arm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm talking about 30 years ago, but here's something that sticks in my mind as I'm telling this story. One of the things is our police procedure is handcuffing somebody's hands behind their back. So that threw me for. So not only did his goddamn arm come off, his arm is in my dog's mouth. My dog is like having a party, like he just got a bone. And the guy's arm isn't there, so I'm like all frazzled. I can't. The guy's arm is in my dog's mouth. I want to go handcuff him, but he only has one arm. What do I do? Is it still like a wrist that he has one arm? So I'm saying these are the kind of things that
It's a shit show.
It's a shit show. It's a shit show. And again, it's things that happen that your brain can't really process, like the World Trade Center. To keep going back to that analogy, you can't process it. So this guy's arm is in my dog's mouth. I'm like, okay. And the dog was like, it was just,
this is awesome.
This is awesome. I got a nice treat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
that was
they don't train you that in the fucking academy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but as a result of that, then, of course, we have done that. So you can take that experience, and that's what life experiences do. Now you have to go back to the drawing board. And we used to call dogs out. So that was the standard to train dogs to bite an arm. But if you think about it, if you're running away from the police, you're probably not going to offer your arm to the dog. Yeah. Right, exactly.
Here.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So more likely you're going to run away and keep your arms up. And we used to call that being sleeve happy, because that was the way we trained police dogs, to take the arm. And then literally you could run away from the dog if you keep your arms up, because he's just going to run alongside you.
Yeah, hey.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we had other training methods where we would teach the dog to, bite whatever area of the body was exposed.
That was fucking crazy. That was like a crazy story. The police department, you worked for Nassau for like 30-some years.
I started out in New York City.
Yeah.
I worked in law enforcement my whole life, but beginning, in corrections, as I said, Maximum Security, then New York City, and then I transferred to the Nassau County Police Department.
Which is, if people don't know what that is, it's a county. It's a second. There's only 2 counties on Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk.
Right, and it's a huge suburb. It's it's one of the most expensive areas to live in. It's
Yeah, so it's a huge fucking county in Long Island.
That's right.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So huge. Anyways, so what's your? Do you still do stuff with the cops or the police department? Like, what's your your take on it's a long ass time to be a cop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So my perspective on law enforcement and police department, obviously police, firemen, they do very noble things. But sometimes there's like a narrative to it, so if you ask the average person, a cop, what do you do? And they say they want to help people and they want to save the world. Sure. It's a very altruistic opinion. My experiences weren't always that way. So for myself included, I wanted the fun. I enjoyed being a cop. I was young, back in the day, 30 years ago, society, everything was different. So I had a lot of fun. But with that said, my motivation wasn't really, to be honest, helping people. It was for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the excitement, the adrenaline kind of things. So I got into law enforcement for that reason. Good pay. It wasn't, again, to save
pension,
the world.
insurance,
All that good shit. Not to save the world. And I feel, and I do today, I feel it's kind of a false narrative, because I was a supervisor, and a lot of cops, police, they say they just want to save the world and save the community, but they were very selective over what communities they wanted to save. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So,
of course.
So there was certain underserved communities just like it is today. So if you really believe that, and maybe things have changed, morally, ethically, things have changed. But back in my day, things were different. And so I always describe New York City. I had a certain experience. Obviously, New York City is like, the busiest city in the world, the most active back in the day. Criminal activity was huge. So that fit right into me. So it wasn't like morally I cared. I liked that. The more crime, the better for my purposes, because I enjoyed
enjoyed your job.
I enjoyed the hunt and the chase. So then when I moved to Nassau County Police, it was a little bit different. Then I started seeing the realities as you get a little older. I was in my early 20s. So I describe working for the Nassau County Police Department in that day is like working for the mafia. It was like, So what people don't realize, and you have it today, like you got everything is very political. Police departments are political. The FBI is political. So I was always... I was kind of out of the box, so to speak. I was a hard person for them to contain.
Sure.
And to my detriment sometimes, because I got in a lot of trouble. So they transfer me all over. Fortunately, I worked in Nassau County, so there was only a limited amount of places they could transfer me to, So, and I said the only difference between the Nassau County Police Department and the mafia, instead of getting a broken leg, I got transferred to, the furthest away from my house. So that was their form of punishment. But it had similarities to it. It had like not a gang mentality, but like a group thing. Sure. So there's all individually, my colleagues and supervisors in the police department, they're good people. If you met them at a barbecue, they'd be nice, you have a beer, they're nice. But when you put them together collectively, they got to believe their own press. They have to believe what they're doing is correct. Sure. They can't change their ideology around. So I had a lot of problems with police departments, particularly Nassau County Police Department, because it was kind of like an old boy network at the time. And as I said, I got great friends, family members. But at the time, it was kind of funny. That's the way I used to go with like disciplinary boards, and I felt like I was like in like Auschwitz. I don't know. I thought I was at some like criminal trial or something.
Really?
So, yeah. But
interesting. So you said that you would get in trouble a lot. What do you mean by getting in trouble?
Oh, well, depending on who you ask. So you know the old story. There's three sides to every story.
Yours, mine, and the truth.
Right, exactly. So the truth is always in the middle. If you were going to ask them, the one side, they'd say I was this rogue, crazy bastard that did what I wanted, didn't follow orders, and, whatever. Kind of all kinds of crazy things. Yeah. And to some degree... it was true because I did challenge authority, and that's been my MO since I dropped out of school at 16.
Same.
So it's and again, I'm not bragging about that, but if I view incompetence, but the military and law enforcement, there's no room for you to allow to have incompetence. And most of my supervisors, people in charge of me, didn't want people smarter than them. So if you see organizations, and you get promoted or something, they might like you, but they want to make sure that you're not smarter than them to keep you in a box. So I was hard to contain. And, the expression was boss fighters. I was a boss fighter because I just... not physically, but I challenge.
I know what you mean. I'm the same.
I challenge logic, and in a respectful way. And I used to get transferred, as I said, from precinct to precinct to precinct. And I felt bad for the commanding officer because they'd greet me, but they heard the story like I was a serial killer. Yeah. Right. So, and they'd sit me across the table as though, they all had their leadership style. Someone's going to be a hard ass. Yeah. Somebody's going to... None of it worked for me. And I just say, I'm not a monster. I can be your best asset if you just don't bullshit, don't fuck with me. Yeah. Don't, political shit I'm not going to do well with. So, and that's got me in trouble. And some people appreciate it. So there was supervisors that secretly liked me. But secretly, they would never say that at a social gathering. Yeah. And again, I don't have a bad taste in my mouth. And if you ask them, here's what used to piss me off. If you ran into one of my bosses, a police commissioner, and say, what's the story of Mike Gould? What's his story? And this is their stock answer. They said there's a lot more to Mike Gould than you know. So that, if you think about that statement, what does that mean? That leaves it up to you. I used to tell them, do me a favor. The next time somebody asks you about Mike Gould, just tell them I have no secrets. Tell them whatever the shit you think I did. But don't leave that little question mark.
I could be like, oh.
Right. If somebody said, hey, well, Corey, there's a lot more to Corey than you want to ask, or I can tell
My imagination just goes.
You're right. What is he? A pedophile, serial killer? What's the story? So that was my.
Fucking Rampart shit.
Yeah. So that was. Again, I loved every minute of it, including the disciplinary part, because it was just challenging to me. So I have no regrets at all. I loved law enforcement.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun. A lot of excitement.
So you did law enforcement. Obviously, you were working with dogs your entire time. The one thing that fascinates me, that fascinates me about you is your ability to control a situation with a dog. That because we have Boomer and we brought him in for literally within 5 minutes. I was like, whose fucking dog is this? Like I was projecting a lot of anxiety on him, and you could pick that up. But I was so impressed because you see Cesar Millan and all these fucking whoever they are, dog whispers and stuff like that. But you don't really see or hear a lot of the stuff that you talk about. Like they talk a little bit about it, but the mammalian brain and the things that we do as humans to our dogs, which is fucking crazy.
Right, it's crazy.
You shouldn't do. I mean, you can do them.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about tell me about the dog brain.
Right. So dogs have different brains. They have a mammalian brain. I don't want to get technical, but we have a neocortex. So our brain, our human brain, our executive brain is so complicated. It houses all kinds of emotions, intelligence. We can listen to music. We can do this podcast. Yeah. You can tell me what each piece of equipment is. A dog, any dog, it doesn't matter if it's a poodle or a pit bull. It has the same brain. It's a mammalian brain that's not changed in 500,000 years. It hasn't evolved. So we have evolved. So we dress dogs up. So we want the only skill set or communication we have is a human communication. And dogs are oblivious. So the best analogy I could use, if you have a 3-year-old, 4-year-old deaf child, you can't communicate with them in English language. And then they need to be taught everything in a different form of communication. So the only thing we do at Hounds Town effectively is we're bilingual. We know what the needs of humans are. We know whatever you want to do. And again, it's fine, but don't get mad at the dog when it's shitting in your house or tearing your shoes up. Your shoes, they're not shoes to the dog. They have your odor on it. They're a piece of leather. They're a dead animal, basically, and they eat it. Yeah. And then you get home and you're screaming, yelling, crying, So... yeah, so it's just understanding the simplicity of it. And what I do is I tell people, particularly my clients, this is so simple that most people can't do it because your human brain, particularly a business like you live in a very technical world of stuff. So it's almost hard for you to just understand the simplicity of the dog brain or the mammalian brain.
You couldn't be more fucking right, because when everything that me and Corinne or whatever we do to our dogs or animals, we treat them just like a lot of people. We treat them like children or they're our babies. They're not even but they're animals.
Right.
They're domesticated, obviously, but they're animals.
Right.
They have a brain that works like an animal, and there's certain things that they do that people think is cute or sweet or whatever that they're doing because they're fucking animals.
Right.
So what are some of the things that
that's a good point. So the big word of the day, and I'm not, is anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is when humans ascribe human behavior to animals, whether it's a horse. I mean, we watch cartoons, there's pets, all of these things, and we think that it's true, but the dogs are incapable of advanced emotional things. So I think the most important thing is just understanding their simplicity. So as you said, they can be great family members. I love dogs. I love dogs like probably people don't even understand. But they can't be human. So you can love fish, but they got to be in water. You can't take a fish out of water. It's going to die. We all know that. Yep. So birds need to be in nests. So we know all of these things. But this anthropomorphism, we want that. We want to love something. We want to love it. And dogs are the perfect ones because they bond And, in many ways, they're our hostage, right? So they can't go. They don't have thumbs, so they can't go anywhere. So we think we're doing all these things, and generally we are. Believe me, everybody, my family, everybody, Jackie, bed dogs are in bed with us. But don't be surprised when the dog growls at you, or the dog just jumped in mud and then jumped in your bed. You can't rational. They couldn't give a shit about mud. So, I just laugh. People like to kiss their dogs, right? Give me a kiss. So when I explain what that behavior, first of all, I ask, did the dog eat its own shit? Because it probably does. So now you're kissing the dog. And even in a more primal sense, the reason the dog is kissing, it's not a romantic act of French kissing with a human. They learn, their mother used to regurgitate their food into their mouths. So when you understand the primal essence, mom would go kill something. They'd actually digest it, which I think is amazing. The mother would kill, or father would kill something, digest it, bring it back to the den, and regurgitate. Rather than carry it and drag it, they'd regurgitate it back into the puppy's mouths. So now the puppy wants to lick your face to get the Big Mac off your mustache or whatever the hell it is. But it's not a romantic act of affection.
God, when you say it like that, it sounds so fucking gross.
Right,
and just, like,
exactly.
Repulsive,
Well, I heard they're licking their ass, they're licking their balls, and then they're kissing you. Whatever. But meanwhile, if I got to brush my teeth, I got to be like completely sterile before God knows a woman kisses me.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah. So I asked, does your dog eat shit? Yeah. And then the next thing is they want to stop. So people, because that's not an uncommon thing. The dog eating their own feces.
Yeah.
And people want to.
Why do they do that, though?
Well, it's nutritional thing. It depends on who you ask. Sometimes somebody would say they'd pick up their excrement so another predator wouldn't know where it is. Or it can be a nutritional thing. But what makes me
malnourished, if they're malnourished.
Malnourished. There's some kind of nutrients they're not
Sure.
available. So that's why they may eat grass. And again, I don't know the scientific. But the thing that makes me laugh is there's products on the market because dogs do eat their own excrement. So people go out and they buy something that they spray on the shit. And I'm like, what could smell worse or taste worse than shit? So what is this item that you're spending $10 for or whatever it is to spray on top of dog feces? That's going to be, that's horrible. I'll eat my own crap, but not with that stuff on it.
We have that in our cabinet right now.
Right, you do?
And the little tablets that we can give to them to make their breath smell better.
Okay, well, that might be, you might want to take that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like, I think it's all like, some of that stuff is kind of scamish.
It is. Well, people are tapped in. This is why Hounds Town, frankly, is so good, Hounds Town USA, because we don't bullshit people and we don't exploit you emotionally. Yeah. So, dogs come here, they hump, jump, and dump. Dogs are so simple. They just literally want to sniff each other's butts. They're not, as I always say, they have no race. They're not racist. They're not judgmental. Sure. They either like you or you don't. And if they don't like you, they might bite you. And if they love you, they'll bond with you forever. And they do have emotions, but not complicated. They don't have love and hate. So I hate my not my first wife. My third wife I hate. I hate her. So, but I love my new wife for the moment. Yeah. And that may change. So dogs are not that complicated. This is the beauty. This is why we're drawn to dogs. It's something we can control. Yeah. They're not taking the car and leaving for 3 days. They're in our,
they're a hostage. Like
they're a hostage.
That's a great fucking way to explain
it.
Right.
But we like to think we're good hostage takers. But myself included, I'm only giving you my spin on things, So
what emotions do dogs have? Because when you tell me certain things about Boomer and this and that, I believe you. But then I'm like, yeah, but there's still a chance that he loves me, and you know what I mean? Like,
well, he does, right? But I think he does. It's just not complicated love. He's so, again, a hostage. There's something called the Stockholm syndrome. You're familiar?
Yeah.
Right. So it's just not complicated. But the good part is they don't have those toxic emotions. So yeah, they bond. So I'm just careful with the words because we think of love as the dog is going to kill for you. They're not. So, just be prepared that a burglar can come in your house and Boomer's going to just stare at them
or run away.
Or run away.
More than likely.
And if he does bite them, he's protecting himself and not you. So we like to assign that, like Boomer will kill somebody if somebody comes in. And we know that that's not true. So it's a bonding that's not like nothing else. It's birds can't bond with you that way. Cats don't bond with you that way. So it's a bond. Sure. They need your touch. They need your food. They need everything. So it's, but they don't get jealous, although it may look like jealousy. They don't get angry, although it looks like anger, right? If you reach down and take their bone, they bite you in the hand. So that looks like, we would describe that he's angry or vicious.
He's a bad dog. Yeah.
Right. It's not. It's just a mammalian behavior, right? So if I'm at a steak restaurant and somebody's rude enough to reach down and take my steak, I'll probably put a fork in their hand.
What the fuck?
However, if the waiter says, excuse me, sorry, you're done. So it's just about respecting the animal. We understand that. We understand to respect the dog's boundaries. Don't try to make them human, but enjoy them. As I would always say, if you have a child with a disability, they're wonderful, right? But they can't necessarily do what you want them to do. They might not be a football player. They might not want to go on a roller coaster. So we do a lot of work with autistic kids and stuff. They're wonderful. Deaf kids. I love working with deaf kids. That sounds weird, but they're totally focused and they just appreciate, there's so much appreciativeness, but they have a different way to communicate. So you can't talk to a deaf person. That's just like a news alert. Verbally. Yeah. Right. So you want to communicate, you learn sign language or some mechanism. And the same goes for a dog. They're not human. They're not processing English language. They don't know what the hell you're talking about. They just see your mouth moving.
Sure.
So it's kind of incredible. Once you get it, and the simplicity of it is so simple that humans have almost universally, I go to people's houses and say, this is so easy, you're not going to do it. And they get it. Like, don't look at your dog. They can't not look at their dog. Don't touch your dog. They can't not touch. They get frustrated with themselves because it's so simple. It's like riding a bicycle. The simplicity is there.
Well, I see videos of you going into a house and the dog's running up, jumping on the window or the door. The owner is, no, and like being aggressive and doing this and that, projecting anxiety on the dog. And then like literally in 15 minutes, you can go in the house. The dog runs away from the doorbell. You could throw a steak on the middle of the floor. He'll just sit there and look at it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, can you come to my house? Like Boomer's a great dog. Like, he's very like relaxed and chill and this and that, but when he sees another dog, which is my fault because when he got attacked at the dog park, I never took him back, right? Which is a terrible mistake.
Well, it's not though. That's the problem I have. You're now absorbing some kind of emotional thing that it's a terrible mistake. I should have done that. The chances are most of these things are genetic to begin with, so it's not necessarily what it appears to be. And humans are emotional creatures, and they want to observe. One of the biggest prohibitors in dog interaction, for sure, I would argue human interaction, is guilt. So I feel guilty about my children. I feel guilty that I wish they had a car. The other, you can go down the road of guilt, and it prohibits you from growing. And it definitely prohibits dogs from growing. It's just an acceptance of who they are, their personality. So again, I'd argue if you have a deaf child or blind kid, they may not be able to go play dodgeball.
Yeah.
That's not sad. Yeah. That's great because they can do other things that are incredible, and their other senses are so enhanced that they can do things that make us look like morons.
Yeah.
So guilt is a big problem, and it's about accepting dogs for who they are and not. So I couldn't care less about a breed. People will call me up. I got a schnoodle doodle poodle. Yeah. He's 3 years old. You know how they are, and he was tied to a fence in Brooklyn. Yeah. This is all nonsense. It's nonsense. It would be like you describing, your DNA to me and saying I'm Irish, European, this little German. You know how that is.
Yeah.
And it's ludicrous. So dogs just want to be respected, left alone. They need a little love here and there, not as much as most humans project on them.
That's so true.
Right. And it's fine, and you get them out of balance. So here it is. Particularly dog training behavior. It's like a magic trick. Once you know the magic trick, it's like, that's it? So what I do when I go into people's houses, I stick to my very simple premise. Don't look, talk, or touch. Now the dog is like, what the fuck why isn't this guy looking at me? He's trying to get me to look, and I don't. I shake people's hands. I literally take over their house because it's not their house, it's the dog's house. So when I take over their house, I take over the dog.
Got it.
Without physicality. And this is not, one of the things I always like to point out, this is not heavy-handed, pinch collar. It's nothing. It's literally nothing except the lack of, as I said, eye contact and touching and doing weird shit, throwing dog biscuits around. Exactly. Yeah. And confusing the shit out of them. Basically, that's what you're doing. So the doorbell is where drama unfolds for humans. It's dramatic for everybody. So
it is.
Yeah, well, because if you know somebody's coming to a barbecue, that's one thing. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, the same sound of the doorbell, if you're like, my heart's pounding out of my chest, nothing good happens at 2
I'm in the
o'clock
safe
in the morning.
ready, you know, I'm...
Right, you're ready to lock it.
Yeah.
Right, but the dog has no clue what it is. They don't tell, they can't look at their watch.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Your dogs don't have watches?
Right, they tell time
too.
by our movements.
Yeah.
So it's just an incredible, simple thing.
It is.
It's that most people can't do it because our brains are all caught up. And the more analytical you are, the more technology you submerge yourself in, the dog brain becomes very complicated.
So then why does I'm Boomer's fine when we wake up. He's the best in the morning. He's all sweet and cute. Mm-hmm. And then once he realizes at a certain time that we're starting to get ready.
Right.
Corinne's getting dressed. She's going to work. I'm about to leave and go run some errands, go edit whatever I'm doing. He gets sad looking. He goes and sits on the carpet. He won't give us kisses and hugs when we leave. He is like, fuck you guys. You know, you guys are about to leave me. Why does he do that?
Right. Well, I think it's not what you see it is. So I don't know how you can determine if a dog looks sad. So obviously you're describing that probably because his tail's not wagging and he knows something in his environment's going to change. So dogs are incredible at processing everything. You don't realize the habits you have. You sleep on the exact same side of the bed, I almost guarantee. Yeah. If you go on the other side, you won't be able to sleep. Mm-hmm. You sit in the same chair when you eat dinner. You don't move around necessarily. So we are creatures of habits, and dogs are creatures of habit. So, yeah, obviously, a dog that's loving and wants to play all day, but it's like a child or, you're going to work. You got to go to work. So they know, they tell time by your movements. You do everything so routinely, you don't even realize it. You put your watch, whatever you do is the same all the time, and dogs tell time. Dogs tell time, and they have this incredible ability to categorize or catalog information. So people wonder how they know when you're going on vacation. Usually, you pull out a bag that you haven't used 6 months ago when you go to the airport, a backpack or something, but this is what you always take on vacation. That's it. They don't need to know more. They don't need to check. They don't need to know anything, but that bag means they're going to disappear. That's all they know. They don't know whether you're going. They don't have any concept of time. They can't say, "Oh yeah, I know he's going to be back in 8 hours." So they have this sense of abandonment, but that's not bad. But they're pack animals that require.
So their pack is leaving, and
so they're alone. They're lone wolves, so to speak. Wow. So now they have to terrorize. If the landscaper comes, they got to defend. There's nobody else there. So again, it's like leaving a 3-year-old child. Give them a flashlight and say, "Listen, I hear noises in the basement. Go figure it out." So we just take these little simple things for granted. But dogs, they're not thinking. They have no real future. They're not thinking about going to school. They're not thinking about the summer, if they got to lose weight for the summer. They just know they live in the moment of time, and that's what makes them incredible motivators for me. They live in the moment of time, and. You've seen Rosie without her 2 legs. Yeah. She's not thinking back she doesn't hate the people in Bolivia or wherever the fuck she came from. She's here in the moment, and she's this incredible spirit. So dogs live in the moment. So obviously, if their pack members are leaving and they don't really know when they're coming back, it sets them out of balance a little bit. So it's sadness. I don't know if that's the exact word, but it's a version. All these things are versions of the emotion. Love, sadness, guilt.
It's just not what our version is.
Exactly. Ours is way complicated.
It's so true that you say that because I know Boomer has his own duffel bag. So when we travel, he has this black leather, pebbled leather bag that he knows all his treats are in, all his toys, all that shit's in there. So when he sees me move that bag or do anything with it,
he gets aroused,
fucking nuts.
Stimulated, right.
He's like, "Oh, all right, we're going somewhere." Right. It's fucking crazy. So now that totally makes sense.
Oh, it's just right that they make this simple connection. The same thing happens with everybody's listening with the leash. You pick up the leash, the dog has a shit fit and gets excited. So, but again, we look to balance the energy. So sometimes, if we see a dog that we have called separation anxiety, I mean, some dogs really go crazy. They start chewing furniture, relieving themselves in the house. They really have and it's really just from anxiety. So, but we have ways of just understanding. We leave. We put we take the bag that we go shop, his bag, and then sit on the couch with it. Oh. And then he looks and what's going on here, Corey? That's my bag. Why aren't we leaving? Yeah. And then you just disrupt his thought process and make it just chill. Just
even it out.
Even it out. Balance it, energy. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. As a cop and being a police officer for so long, you've probably seen some crazy shit. So what's the craziest thing that you've ever encountered, or like, because you're a funny guy. So like, I feel like a lot of the stuff that you guys would see on a beat on a regular day basis is like eventually would become funny to you or whatever, to where some of us might be like, oh my God, that's so sad or terrifying, So
right, yeah. So in law enforcement, and I'm assuming medical field, you get desensitized to certain things. You can't really express your emotions the way you normally would. And over a period of time, if you think of it, law enforcement, we talk about people with PTSD from war when they go get deployed for like 6 months or a year. We're doing this. Law enforcement is doing this prolonged over 20, 25, 30 years, meaning they're normal family people, and then they're injected into tragedies one minute and then happiness. So there's a long line of emotions. And I guess the thing that I think of most is the real anomalies in life that, because after a while you just can't even, I couldn't even tell you how many dead bodies I've been exposed to, or mangled bodies. And I feel kind of weird talking about it, because a lot of times it looks like I'm insensitive to these things, and I'm not. So the stories that I'll tell you, the two that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, they're just kind of bizarre and out of the normal. Obviously, most people know cops go to deadly car accidents and, see some shit. And very truthfully, after a certain period of time, you do get desensitized. I can't even tell you. The only time I got emotional, I think, in 30 years, when it was and I think universally police will say, when it deals with a child.
Yeah.
So an innocent child, that was stuff that would, get me emotional. But you still have to contain your emotion, right? So if you have a pedophile, you can't kill them, although you'd want to.
Yeah.
So you still have to suppress it. But anyway, my point is, when I tell these stories, I want to make sure that people listen. Not that I really give a shit, but I want them to know that, I'm not a monster. Like, get off on this. So you asked the question. So it's two things I can think of. So you know how, like, you hear dispatches on the radio? They're very calm no matter what's happening. They go, 1 Adam 12 responds to a mass murder at the scene of, and the cops go 10-4, I'm on my way.
Like nothing.
It was very right. And it has to be that way, because the 911 operators, they can't panic. They can't show emotion, nor should the cop. So one day, I was driving, and I'm in the Canine unit, and my dog was trained to find bodies and parts of bodies, or, so it was probably the worst blizzard on Long Island. I think it was in 1997. It was blinding blizzard.
96 was the blizzard.
96.
In Maryland, it was.
There you go. So I was driving. I happened to, in the Canine unit, we had a 4-wheel drive car. And at the time, really, we were transporting doctors to it was really bad. Snow blindness, where you couldn't see a foot in front of you. So I got a call over the radio. I was Canine 1. Like I said, you never know that's what makes police work so fascinating. You never know what the next radio call is going to be. You never know. It could be anything. So this dispatcher said, Canine 1, are you available? And I was. They said, can you respond to the 7-Eleven in Belmore to search for a head? And I'm like, yeah, 10-4. What'd you say? I'm like, search for a head.
What?
Right. So here's what happened, sadly. So a person drove and got in a car accident and got decapitated. So they were snowblind. He was going way too fast, and his head literally went through the windshield of the car. But it was snowing so badly that obviously a head, you could find the blood splatter and everything else, but the snow was coming down so heavy that the head and blood was covered within 10 seconds. So they had no idea with his bowling ball size head, and it went like a torpedo, right? So it launched ahead when it gets decapitated. Yeah. So
holy shit.
Right. So I'm trying to process, like, look for a head. It didn't make at a 7-Eleven,
a
7-Eleven parking lot in broad daylight.
Slurpees.
But
heads,
right. But the thing was, they didn't want the snow. They wanted to find the head, so when the snow melted, kids going to school wouldn't see this person's head.
Sure.
And of course, obviously the person died, so
Obviously
it was a fatal accident. He doesn't have a head, so that's a no-brainer. You don't have to be an EMT to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So, but that was an odd story, and of course
That's so fucking
right.
weird.
And the dog was able to find it, within seconds again, even though they were disoriented because the snow was so heavy, and we found the head in seconds. And
really?
Right, because you could smell the head.
When you find, I'm sorry, now I want to get descriptive.
Right.
When you find something like that, do you say,
no.
Here it is, Jimmy?
Kind of, yeah.
What?
And it's weird, Like I said, I picked up body parts, complete legs of people, and it's just, I can't describe. That's not something you get used to.
No.
But I picked up a complete leg from the groin down to the foot that somebody got hit by a car. It was an adult. And, I look for it, and I found the leg. We got to do something. We got to get it to the hospital to try to, have it reattached. So these things do occur. But when a finger is one thing, but a full leg and a head.
Yeah.
And the head's dead. So at least the leg, we tried to have it reattached. The person didn't die. But the point is, these are weird kind of things that your human brain, talking earlier, we were talking about our human brain. I actually witnessed this person get hit by a car, and they were just tapped by the fender of the car. Tapped. The car was going about 15 miles an hour. But the way it impacted their thigh, the leg took off like a boomerang. And you think of a boomerang, right? Because the thigh is heavier than the foot. Yeah. So it just goes flying. Yeah. And then when you look at the person who's still alive, and they don't have a leg. I guess that's my thing. I like appendages missing. Whether it's a world, it just blows me away that what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. Your head's your head is like trying to what
process
the fuck?
This person's laying here. He's talking to me, but he doesn't have a leg.
Yeah,
and it's gone.
And
I saw it.
Their shock and adrenaline is like taking over.
Right, and actually, I said that. I made a mistake and said, "Oh, Jesus Christ, this guy's missing his leg."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What? I'm missing my leg." So that wasn't good bedside manners,
shit.
I guess. But the point is, we looked for the leg, and it went flying. Took the leg. It's just weird to pick up a dead person,
That's super
a human leg, and transport it to the hospital.
He lived.
He lived. Couldn't reattach it because it ripped his leg literally from his groin off. So it was nothing. It wasn't a clean severed limb. But anyway. So that was that. But I guess my point is the human brain, how we look and process things. It's no matter how experienced you are.
It's like
right. And at that incident, I'm just going to add this. So it was on the side of a road. So nurses coming home from a hospital stopped to help me because they saw it pretty much within seconds that I did.
Yeah.
But they're training because they work in an ER. So the nurse comes running up and says, "All right, I got my blood pressure cuff." I'm like, this dude, trust me, you don't need it. He ain't got no blood pressure, But their training was confined to an emergency room of a hospital, not the side of the Southern State Parkway in Queens or wherever the hell we were. Wow. So everybody gets into a little state of shock no matter how well you're trained.
Sure.
So that same person in an ER would have been handled perfectly well, but laying on the side of a road without a leg.
Out of the environment.
So that was weird.
What's the other thing?
Oh, well, the other one, again, so police at some point are insensitive to seeing things. So we'd go to the scene of dead people, right?
Yeah, sure.
People pass away in the middle of the night. We get called to scenes like that. So again, it's not like my proudest moment in law enforcement.
Sure.
But you had to, in order to function doing police work, 12 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, you don't even intentionally do it. You come desensitized to certain things. And as I said before, most police officers, including myself, when it becomes a child or some kind of really heinous abuse by a weak member of our society, just like dogs, it's more emotional than it is for adults. So I got a call for a person that passed away at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was with 2 or 3 of my coworkers, and we responded, and our job was to go find. It wasn't an investigation. The person was dead.
Sure.
He overdosed or passed away in the middle of the night, and our job was to assist the undertaker in putting, or the mortician, whatever the hell you call him, is take the body and put it into a body bag and help the undertaker because he couldn't come to the scene and pick up a 200-pound
man
right.
Who's dead.
He's dead. Right. Exactly.
Dead weight. Literally.
Right. So the police we would assist them in that. So we went to the house. It was dark, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we come in, and the people are obviously upset, and we would come in and apologize for their loss, their condolences. We'd ask where the deceased was. Generally, it was a bedroom.
Sure.
So we'd go to their bedroom. Now, because rigor mortis has set in, the deceased was in a very weird, where however he was laying in bed was the way he was. And rigor mortis, we know rigor mortis is a tightness in the muscles. So he couldn't be moved, and we had to get him into a body bag. And, I think this is a coping mechanism. So I'm with my 3 friends, and we go in. We're trying to put this fella's arms into the body bag. And every time I'd push on his right arm, it would spring up. And I'm really struggling. All of us, one person was struggling to straighten out a leg, and I was struggling particularly with the right hand. I remember it very clearly. So you just have to think of this. We're in a dark room. this is abnormal by any stretch of the imagination, unless you are, I guess, I don't know what. This is not something you do every day, including in law enforcement. So I'm trying to push this guy's right arm into the body bag. I let go of it, and it smacked me in the face and sprung back and swacked me right. I almost got a bloody nose. In the moment, that second in time that happened, everybody in the room except the Undertaker broke out laughing hysterically. I mean, not just giggling. It's that uncontrollable.
It's like in school with your friend, like, you know, you hear them, you can't stop it. Yeah.
Right. You can't stop it. And the more it happens, it's really bad.
Worse.
So we got like literally snot coming out of our noses. This is how laughing it is. And again, I think it's probably some kind of a default, some kind of psychological default mechanism, defense mechanism. But the problem was we have now finally get this person in a body bag, seal it up. And it was a struggle. So the challenge was now to get this body that's in a body bag that's pretty heavy and got rigor mortis. So it's not that it's moving, but it's very stiff and heavy.
Sure.
So the challenge is now to get the body out of the house, walking through the grieving family, which of course is horrible, but we're in this state of uncontrollable laughter, and we're like, how are we going to do this? And every time we tried, probably 3 times, and every time I went to reach for the door, somebody else would burst out laughing. If it wasn't one person, it was somebody else, and including me. And everybody's experienced this, right? In church or some inappropriate place.
In
you
a
get
circumstance where you shouldn't be laughing. Everyone's just hysterical.
Right. So that was it. We got him in the body bag, and we literally had to practically run through the living room out of the front door.
Christ.
As soon as we got on the other side of the door, we started busting out laughing. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a kind of I don't know what that means.
Well, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you're a psychopath. It just means that
that's
your job,
it
just happens to be an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, no, good.
You know, so
right.
I don't. That's
okay, so I shouldn't be that hung up on. No counseling
don't use
for that.
Your human brain to have guilt.
Okay, thank you. I'll put that in a box. I don't have to. I don't have to go to happy hour tonight.
No, you're good.
Work my way through that with the bartender. All right, cool.
You're good because it's a terrible thing that someone passed away.
Oh,
but, you know, that's your
but
job.
there is humor to it, and if you can't, you know, one of the problems is I have been since I can remember the class clown, so I like to inject humor into everything, and I think that's important to have fun. Yeah. But obviously that was
I'm the same way, dude. I'm always trying to find the funny thing out of a serious
life,
situation.
Of course,
you know,
right? Exactly.
You can't always be serious.
No, you shouldn't hardly ever be serious. Actually, in my mind, you should always be having some fun.
Yeah,
Never.
always have. No, you're fun. You're fucking fun. So let me just ask you one last question.
Yes, sir.
If there's one thing that you would tell people that are dog owners, what is the one takeaway or the one thing that you would be like, listen, don't do this or do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you've definitely opened my eyes to a lot of stuff.
Right.
So what's like the one
If
thing?
somebody was listening in their home, just for an hour, don't look, talk, or touch your dog and watch the dog's behavior just as a result of that. So the dogs are very manipulative. They're kind of narcissistic, just like 3-year-old children. They manipulate. 3-year-old children manipulate humans to get what they want, whether it's ice cream, candy, go to bed. That's just the nature of being a child. Dogs are always trying to control their environment and their pack members, which are humans in this case, because we've taken them away from their natural pack. We extricated them from natural and brought them into artificial. So if human beings at home right now, just don't look at your dog for 1 hour. It doesn't mean, you know, people get all caught up on this and they look at me like I'm insane. Goes like, what do you mean I can't touch my dog? I didn't say that. I said just for a moment of time, look, talk, or touch. And you'll find it's probably going to be difficult for you not to reach down and touch your dog when it comes near you, and just respect them for who they are. Like I said, the best dogs I've ever had are somehow would be considered misfits, deaf dogs, blind dogs, 3-legged. I got my Rosie, 2-legged dogs. I can be inspired by them. Just understand they're living in the moment of time. They're not thinking about the future. They just want to be loved and respected. Just love and respect and set boundaries. And that's what I want as a human. I want balance in my life. We're all going to hot yoga and we're doing all this crazy shit for balance. When you really start examining your dog, they can give you all of this balance in life. And just try to be more like a dog. Think of yourself living 18 inches off the ground without thumbs, without the ability to stand erect. Yeah. So dogs have been this way for 500,000 years. They haven't evolved. So it's better for us to get in touch with our mammalian brain because we have one, but our neocortex grew on top of it. So we all have fight or flight, predatory instincts. We'll kill each other. We'll cannibalize each other. That's all there, but we forget it. And our brain has taken us, a human brain has taken us so far away from our primal being. So that would be my advice. That's what I do.
Because we evolved.
We evolved, and the dogs haven't. And so, again, the brain is good, but it's also very toxic. Dogs don't do any of this shit. There's no Republican dogs. There's no Democratic dogs. There are border wars in dogs' lives, but that's just their territory. We have that. So we are primal beings, like dogs, mammalian brain, but we evolved. And physically and psychologically, as I said, we have thumbs. Dogs don't. Dogs can't jump up. They can't open. If they did, I'd argue they'd probably get up and move next door.
Yeah.
If they could open the front door, whatever. I'm just saying. So people just chill the fuck out with their dog and understand it's a dog. And just sit back, have a beer, have a coffee, smoke a cigar, and just watch your dog breathing. Just watch him laying on the floor breathing and imagine where his mind is at. And then ring the doorbell and see how that gets him out of balance and wonder what's happening there. And you learn. I learned some of my most important life lessons through watching packs of animals. And here at Hounds Town, it's like a laboratory. We literally watch thousands and thousands of dogs every year, all shapes, sizes, deformities. I have blind dogs that go through a pack. You wouldn't even know. I'd bet you money you wouldn't even be able to tell me which was the blind dog. And you'd argue with me. You'd say, Mike, he must see something. And I'd say, yeah, well, he has no eyeballs, let alone blind. He was born without eyeballs. And they interact in packs. It's shocking to me.
Wow.
Right. So anyway, that's my takeaway.
So just leave your dog alone for at least an hour. Just let him be.
Yeah. Then when you need him or he needs you, get down on the floor, get some popcorn, and love your dog. Scratch him in areas where he can't get scratched. I mean, you got to be, reasonable with that.
Yeah.
But, don't take that too far. But there's certain parts of his body because they don't have thumbs.
Yeah.
So they can't itch themselves everywhere. And when you find that spot, everybody knows, right? You rub your dog on the butt and they get all excited, right? Because they can't do that. We take that for granted.
Oh, wow.
We take all this stuff that we do for granted and what dogs can't do. And we have what we call inattentional blindness. We live in a crazy world. We just had a fire alarm go off.
Yeah.
Dogs don't know anything about fire alarms. They don't know about tile. They don't know anything. So we have to kind of explain to them in dog. That's my takeaway.
That's insane. Well, thank you so much for giving me great conversation.
Always a pleasure. You're a good guy,
and
funny
tips.
guy.
Thanks, man. You're funny. You're way funny.
Oh, yeah, come on. He says that to everybody. I watched his podcast. He's saying that to everybody, every fucking person he said goodbye to. He said the same goddamn thing. Oh,
that's
boy.
Right. You haven't seen one episode.
Right, that's true. Liar. Right, I didn't see it, but I will be. I'm going to be a faithful watcher.
You're going to be a listener because this is going to be good.
Yeah, no, it's fun. You're a good guy, and I love those conversations. I always have. We have
a good banter.
Good energy. Yeah, good energy.
No, and I'm sure you're going to teach a lot of people, and they're going to learn a lot of shit about what to do, what not to do, and then your stories in law enforcement are just fucking insane anyway. So that alone is a good perspective.
It's fun to go back in time and think these things. A lot of them I prefer to block out,
Yeah,
so,
but it's nice to
it's
rehash
fun.
them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Awesome. Good. Well, that concludes another episode of the E4 Explicit podcast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.